bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Chukwu nna n'ụlọ gị ka na-akpọ gị, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Otito na-adịrị gị mgbe niile, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Ụmụ Eliwayi kọta n'otu, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Ka anyị jikọfe ya ofufe Gọdian, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Gọdianism bụ ịhụnanya n'udo, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. Butere anyị ụzọ kpetara anyị azụ, bịakwute ya bịa zuru ike. 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 Ewo is an Igbo Nigerian word that means long life to all of you, and that is what I hope and pray for each and every one of you gathered here underneath the sound of my voice. I am Dr. Dibia, Dr. Wonyo Husimiri, and I'm your host today. It's my pleasure to welcome you, my co-host, Dibia nnyocha, Dibia imare.
No,
yeah. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
We have a very interesting show today. It is interesting because, quite frankly, it is an aspect of our spirituality and actually an aspect of our culture that people really don't understand. And because they don't really understand it, they, if I may use the expression, they bastardize it, undermine it, and put it underneath other similar programs, other similar concepts, constructs in other cultures. So today what we're going to do is talk about Dibias. Dibias, who are they? Who are they? Dibia, our empowered medium, who are they? UD, quite frankly, is an expert on this question. So I am definitely looking forward, UD, explaining this particular topic. Dibia, our empowered mediums, that is the topic today. Now, before we go any further, I just want us to start with something that I read, and it begs the question, who are we really? What do we really think of ourselves? Is it the outside world that defines us, or do we define ourselves? Let me tell you why. The president of Nigeria wrote a letter, commendation to a Nigerian doctorate student in the University of Tsukuba, Japan, Mr. Ike Nweke, who returned a missing wallet with huge sums of money to the police. Police offered him, they told him that what happens usually is when you return something, if after 3 months, nobody claims it, then you can get 10% of whatever that is. He turned that down. And the reason why he told them that he did what he did, why he returned the money, was because he's a Christian. Well, let me say this. Certainly, there are Christians who abide by such values. But are you suggesting then that had he not been a Christian, he would have done something different? Had he not been a Christian, he would have kept the money? I mean, in all the excitement around the fact that a Nigerian man in Japan, they had him on the television, everything, because he returned some money. It's something we see every day. I mean, come on. It's not your money. You're not supposed to keep it. I don't care if you're Christian. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're Chiist. It is a value system that most of our parents teach us. It is ingrained in our culture. You don't take something that don't belong to you. I remember, and I think I've shared this story before, where I lost my green card, when I had my green card, and my money, $1,000. In the village in Nigeria. They didn't keep it. They returned it to me. So if it is a big deal that a Christian returned money, I don't know what it says about us as a people. Does it mean that's the only Christianity offers us such values? Rudy, please. Help me with this conversation.
Well, I tell you what, just listening to you, talking about it, a few things comes to mind. First of all, I think that on the Japanese side, perhaps on the side of the Nigerian president, it's all about expectations. Nobody expected somebody from Nigeria to be that honest enough to turn in that sum of money, found in the street. Now, if you look at other stories in Japan, right, it's part of their culture. It's part of their tradition. You see something that doesn't belong to you, you turn it in. That is Shintoism. It's part of the Shinto religion, right? It's their way of life. If that Nigerian man had not turned that money in, and that money was found by a Japanese, the Japanese would have still turned the same money in to the police because it's part of their cultural expectations. That's how they live. That's how they do business. And that's how they minimize, right? How you say social scourges of, thievery and all that kind of stuff. So for me, listening to you, it just seems to me that the excitement is based on expectation. They didn't expect that somebody from Nigeria will actually turn in that amount of money. So when he turned it in, everybody was like, I can't believe this.
Even our president wrote him a letter to congratulate him. Come on, people.
Even the president doesn't understand that. But beyond that, anyway, as you mentioned earlier, the idea that good only comes out of the Christian spiritual, context, it's blasphemy. It's insulting to the very sanctity of God. Because remember, when humanity was created, Christianism did not exist. There was no Jesus Christ. If you follow the Jewish spiritual, beginnings of Adam and Eve and all that, there was no Jesus Christ. In our own culture, is Iventa and Aja. There was no Jesus Christ. Good and evil existed way before Christianism came along. In our African culture, we say imema enatamma, imenjo enatanjo. If you do good, you expect good things to happen to you. If you do bad, you expect bad things to happen to you. It's not necessarily the way life works out, because sometimes life has its own agenda. and does what life does. I always tell people it's not about doing good or doing bad. It's just about the way the spiritual universe comes together. If you look at the little kid in Somalia who just got blown up or who starved to death, exactly what sin did that child commit to deserve that kind of faith?
Mm-hmm.
Children are supposed to be sinless in all cultures,
yes,
but they don't know better. So if you follow the idea that good begets good and bad begets bad, if you follow it just like it is said, you'll be wrong. The idea that if you do good, you expect good, if you do bad, you expect bad, is just to deal with human behavior, to have you conform to certain values, to keep you on the path of rectitude so that we're not running around here, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Stealing and doing all manner of bad things to one another. It's just a spiritual creed, like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not lie. There's nothing Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, or whatever about those spiritual absolutes. Every culture has it. You come to Africa, there's no culture that says that thou shalt kill, that it's okay to kill. If you go to Europe, there's no European culture that says that. You go to Asia, there's no Asian culture, or in South America, Mayan culture that says thou shalt lie. There's nothing Christian about it. It's just moral, spiritual absolute shared by all cultures in the world. So as far as I'm concerned, a Muslim could have found that money and followed the spiritual tenets of Islam that emphasizes good and turned in that money. I could have done that from my village, not being a Christian, Muslim, or anything else. Yes. Anybody would have done that. Yes. So there's nothing special about what the guy did. The only thing special about it is the fact that the expectation of a Nigerian abroad, which is sad to say, is that if they found something like that, they will keep the money and won't turn it in. And for him to turn it in and then colonize the idea that only if you're a Christian can you do good is just totally ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that is so true, because then it minimizes, or like you said, it's quite insulting to the rest of us who are not, who would do the same thing. It's got nothing to do with Christianity.
Exactly.
It is part of our value system. That's you don't keep something that doesn't belong to you. Yep. Because there's somebody who needs it. I mean, hey, listen, it's important to stress. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of him as a human being, not as a Christian.
Yeah. He did
I'm proud of him as a Nigerian who did something good. But there are many, many Nigerians who do good things all the time.
Yep.
All the time.
He's just a man with conscience. Has nothing to do.
He's just a man with conscience, and there are many of them. So let's not make a big deal of one Nigerian who did something good. Whereas, I mean, we do appreciate that, but I just don't want people to think, oh my God, it's a big deal that a Nigerian returned money. No, we do it all the time. It is part of our life. It doesn't matter if you're Christian or Muslim or Chiist or whatever you are. It is just part of our value system. Anyway, I thought we should start this program. Let's just have that whole conversation.
You have to get that out of your system.
Very odd. Huh?
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay, so anyway, the topic of today, Dibia, our empowered medium. I think that, very honestly, we become our own worst enemies. You see, abandonment is not something someone else does. It is something you do.
Yes.
You hear what I'm saying? Let me say that again. Abandonment is not just something somebody else does to you. It's something that you do to yourself.
Yes.
Before the coming of the Europeans into Africa, think about that. How did we heal ourselves? What was it inherent in our cultural, in our culture, even in our medical practices? What did we do that worked? Because evidently we were not exterminated before they came. Something kept us alive. One of those things is our Dibias. Even the name sounds so prestigious, Dibia. If we would just reclaim it.
They say that a Dibia after God, it's Dibia.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dibia. And there are various kinds of Dibias. But I just want to ask you, Yudi, who's a Dibia? Who's a Dibia? What is your understanding of a Dibia?
Well, Dibias, taxed with holistic medicine and spiritual practices. They are the ones that keep us spiritually healthy and also keep us physically healthy to the best of their ability. Every culture has its own Dibia. Even the Europeans have their own Dibia with a different name. The Chinese had their own Dibia. So depending on who was in control, depending on who the colonizer was at any given point in time, that was responsible for how you were defined or how people looked upon the things that you did as a people, as a culture. Give an instance. Let's just go back to Europe with the Catholic Church. Paganism, which most people, when you say pagan, they say, oh, he's a non-believer or she's a non-believer. They don't believe in God. That's not what paganism is all about. Paganism just defines the ancient population of Rome. The country dweller is a pagan, right? When the Catholic Church was licensed or given the license by Constantine to operate as a corporation, they demonized paganism. They demonized the system of worship that the regular or the country dweller in Rome, professed to, right? So they had to minimize it and then elevate what they do spiritually, so that as the generations, passed, they started to look down on their own way of supplication, bolstered by a policy of blood and iron, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of had people do things by force when you forced it upon them. So they redefined everything. Same thing happened to us when the Europeans came to Africa. They redefined everything that we did. It was part of their modus operandi to take away what is ours and supplant it with theirs. And that way, they not only lorded over you spiritually, but medically, they lorded over you as well. The word doctor is no different from people. They're both taxed with the same. That was my They're both taxed with the same thing. The doctor, the Dibia. Doctor is a Latin word for, and it's pronounced, I think, docere. It's a Latin word, it's pronounced docere. Doctors and Dibias are one and the same, right? Then during the Renaissance, things changed up a little bit, where the practice of medicine became institutionalized. Prior to that, practicing medicine, alchemy or docere, and in Africa, Dibiaship, was based on apprenticeship, right? Somebody identifies a set of skills or values that they had that will pretty much gear them towards that specific discipline. And through apprenticeship, they gained that they needed to practice medicine. Before the European came to Africa, we practiced medicine. We treated people that were sick. We healed people spiritually. We did pretty much the same thing that the Europeans did. The only difference is that because of colonization and the slave trade, we were not given the space to evolve like other cultures did, right? We were cut off at the knees. Our growth, our evolution was pretty much stunted or terminated, period. So we were never able to evolve our traditional medical practices into the 21st century. The irony of this whole thing is the fact that a lot of Western medicine, as we see it today, a lot of the medicine that we use today that, was put together in the lab came out of traditional medicine. Opium, for example, is part of the traditional medicine in Afghanistan and also in China. But you have people like Pfizer that use opium to create medicine. If you go to South America, cocaine is a plant. And a lot of Western medicine that you see today contains cocaine. Some of the antidepressants and all those things that doctors prescribe come from local traditional medicine. But because of money, the economic impact of minimizing the traditional medical practices of other cultures, even some pharmaceutical companies have, colluded with different governments in these, indigenous places to keep the farmers from farming and cultivating these crops that are used in Western medicine, allowing the Western medical companies to gain monopoly over the indigenous product. so that they can have total control and then use those traditional ingredients to create their own Western medicine. So before the European came to Africa, Africans practiced medicine, and medical practitioners and spiritual practitioners in Africa were called Dibias. There are so many different kinds of Dibias. There are 5 major Dibias. And when Dibias consult with a patient, they just don't look at the physical aspect of what the patient is suffering from. They also look at the spiritual part of it, because they feel that your physical sickness in a lot of ways has a lot to do with how healthy you are spiritually, or some of the things that you have done in your life that causes you stress that now has ended up causing you physical, illness. So when a Dibia treats an illness, they just don't treat the physical aspect of it. They also try to do some investigation as to the spiritual nature of your life, or what it is that you were doing, or how you got to where you are now. Again, depending on the kind of sickness that you have. Now, if you want to break your leg, where you just require some splinters to straighten up your bone, maybe it's not so important to deal with the spiritual aspect of your injury. Maybe all they need to know is, what is it that you were doing before you broke your leg? And then they'll go ahead and try to set your bone and then take care of everything that they need to take care of. So through divination, Dibias are able to determine how exactly you ended up sick. So you consult with a Dibia. They go through a bunch of checklists to find out exactly if you've offended anybody, what kind of lifestyle, what did you eat, blah, blah, blah. Just like if you go to the hospital, the medical doctor is going to look at you. They're going to run some tests. They're going to ask you some questions, and so on and so forth. There is no difference, really, except for the fact that the Dibia goes into a more spiritual aspect of healing to be able to prescribe, right, what you need to do for you to get well. That's pretty much it. So the sad thing about Dibias in Africa is just the fact that we have never looked at our own medical practices on equal par as other medical practices in other cultures. I remember in ancient Europe, and it's not really all that ancient, except, things that were going on in Europe up until the 14th century, when we started running up into the Renaissance period. But back then, they were called alchemists. And alchemists really dealt with trying to turn metal into gold. And so they go into all this, secret practices and a lot of secrecy in their art form in trying to turn metal or bronze into gold. And everybody's like, oh my God, really all it is chemistry. And really, if you look at a lot of things that Dibias do in Africa, there's no magic to it. It's just the fact that because being a medical doctor or a Dibia had to deal with a lot of apprenticeship, it's not everybody that does it. There's a level of secrecy, right? In Western medicine, it's sort of like if you want to go to medical school, it's not for everybody. You got to be smart, number one. You have to feel like it is your calling to be a doctor, because there's a lot of self-discipline involved in being a doctor. Same thing as being an apprentice. It's a lifelong commitment to gain expertise in a certain discipline so you could earn a living and also be of good to your community.
That's right.
We did all that. The only difference between the way the Dibia is perceived today and the way the Dibia was perceived before the European came to Africa is the fact that nobody demonized the Dibia, because we understood that we needed the Dibia to survive. We needed the Dibia to cure illnesses. But once the proliferation of Western religion came in and demonized our practice and supplanted it with theirs through an incessant propaganda, we ended up looking down upon the very same discipline that kept us cohesive and alive before the Europeans came. Like you asked earlier in the show, what exactly did we do medically before the Europeans came? Were we still able to take care of malaria? Did Western medicine give us the the cure for malaria.
Yes.
I'm sure you remember the little bit of thing that you drink, the pint, and once you drink it, bam, your malaria goes away. I didn't have to take the quinines, camoquine, nevoquine, chloroquine, Fancida, and whatever else that I had to take that was put together in the lab to feel good. All I needed was get my hands on this plant, boil it, drink it, and I'm good. So,
yeah. And I wanted to ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you believe, I strongly do believe, that it's all a money-making thing. If you minimize what we hold dear and what works for us and supplant it with yours, you make money.
Yes, you do.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I do understand there are orthodox processes that work, absolutely. But there are Dibias, our own processes that work. Let me give you, for instance, our brother. I don't want to call his name. One of our brothers had a very bad leg. Remember that? The orthodox medicine could not fix him. As a matter of fact, they told mom and dad that he had to be amputated. Is that not true?
I remember that in Enugu, yeah.
My parents could not bear the thought of amputating their son. So they took him to a Dibia. And he cured him. He just gave them a simple something that he put together. I don't know exactly what was in it. They put it on his leg for 7 days. And all the pus and all of the infection, everything just seeped out. And to this day, my brother is walking around with his leg that was supposed to be amputated.
I remember that.
So it's important for us to know. What do you think? I think that they can coexist. I think they can coexist. And quite frankly, one of the reasons why we're having a lot of problems is that we have become so dependent on orthodox medicine that those things that we could refine and get better, we abandon them. So now what you have a lot, and you know, I talked to a friend of mine who's a pharmacist, a lot of the medicine in Nigeria is just placebo. It's just placebo. They convince you it works. Then you keep taking it and you keep going back and, you know, and just using it. That's placebo. Okay?
As a matter of fact, just to kind of piggyback on what you were just talking about, what we really need to do in Africa, you know, first of all, you have to have a leadership that has a Pan-African mindset, right? These things don't exist in a vacuum. They are collective forces, right? That helps to minimize, you know, our traditional medicine. And really, quite frankly, everything about African culture. We tend not to understand the economic ramifications of this negligence, right? We tend to, culturally speaking, not understand the economic impact of cultural promotion and tourism, right? Tourism is based on culture and it's based on religion and also based on geography. We tend to negate all these factors as if it is something that is detrimental to our well-being or to our economic health. Now, having said that, we need to have the kind of leadership that understands these things and then allow African traditional medicine or culture to exist side by side. Listen, I'm a firm proponent of cross-cultural pollination. You get a little bit from what you can from other cultures because that's the way the world works. You add it to yours, but you don't throw the baby out with the bath water. And those practices within your own culture that is not relevant in the 21st century, you get rid of them. The world is not stagnant. The world is about evolving, evolution, finding out truths, finding out things that work, getting rid of things that exist due to ignorance. And now that you have access to it, you could negate those things, get rid of them, and then replace them with things that make sense. In Chinese or even Japanese, and let's just say Chinese medicine, it exists side by side with Western medicine. You go to China, you got hospitals. And even within those hospitals, there's an incorporation of Chinese medicine. I'll give an example. Acupuncture is not Western medicine, it's Chinese. They even have clinics. They have institutions of acupuncture. right? That part of Chinese traditional medicine is protected under its law and also looked upon as an economic instrument. And some people will travel from all over the world to come and get the actual Chinese acupuncture in maybe some remote Chinese place and all that. We need the kind of leadership that emphasizes coexistence of both worlds. Things that are foreign, that are good for you, that are healthy, because no one civilization has all the answers.
That's
you
right.
have people that have answers that you don't have, and then you have answers that people don't have. Like, we don't know nothing about acupuncture. We just don't really have a lot of insight about acupuncture. But by incorporating Chinese medical practices, right, into what it is that we already do, then it gives us another avenue of solving issues, specifically or particularly stress-related issues that through acupuncture you could mitigate and take care of it. So to me, it's about having the kind of leadership that understands how the world really works, having the kind of leadership that is not influenced by Western religious interests, right? Mm-hmm. Or economic interest, understanding that I don't have to close my borders to things that are foreign.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
It's best for me to open my borders to things that are foreign, but bring in those things that could help, solidify or build our nation. And those things from outside that are not relevant, that are harmful, we could get rid of those things. So it's a question of having these two institutions existing side by side, learning from one another, and really elevating the health prospects of the indigenous population. That's really where we need to be going, both with traditional medicine and everything that is cultural, everything that is indigenous. Again, like I mentioned earlier, everything about culture of all nations, as time goes on, you find out that some of those things that were practiced because of ignorance are no longer relevant, because you have scientific answers now. Mm-hmm. So you get rid of those things, but you maintain hardcore moral and spiritual absolutes that you need to keep people on the path of rectitude. Because at the end of the day, to build a good economy and build good relationships, people have to feel safe, people have to feel cared for, people have to feel loved, and people have to feel that their opinions and how they feel about things matter. Because collectively, just like this fist right here, I don't know if you see my hand, you can see it on camera. If I go into a fight and I slap somebody, yeah, it might hurt, but it may not have that impact. But if I ball my fingers together, like Maya Angelou said, I could strike a mighty blow. And that's where we need to be headed as far as the coexistence and understanding and appreciation of our traditional medicine is concerned. It's up to us. Nobody's going to do it for us but us.
You know what is sad, though?
Yeah.
Is, when you say you're Dibia,
mm-hmm.
Your own people, I'm not talking about foreigners, your own people say, oh, Dibia.
Yes.
Because they have really bought into that negative concept. Look at some of the hot Nollywood movies. Oh my God. Have you seen them?
Makes you want to throw up.
Oh my God. Do you see how they represent, how they show African spiritual intellect?
Yeah.
They make it such a terrible looking thing and so primitive. Okay, so there are some things that may have to be refined. Why don't you refine it? Why don't you? When I even teach it, come on. Where are we teaching our young people how to be a native Dibias? No. They're not learning none of that. They have to go to all the different
it's gone underground
and learn orthodox medicine.
Yeah.
But the worst part of it, and I love Nollywood and all of that, but I have to tell you, they're the worst assassinators of African culture in every aspect.
They're part of media. They're part of media.
And the Dibia, when they show them with old chicken and all that kind of stuff. Well, let's stop. Before you run around and think it's awful that they make sacrifice. Even your Bible talks about sacrifice. Is that not true?
Oh, it's true. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the core practice of Judaism. The rabbis, when they go into their spiritual introspection, you will see them with chicken, and they'll be moving the chicken over their head, live chicken. And everybody's like, oh my God, this is really spiritual. This is really deep. You know, I need to start doing some, you know, helicopter chicken over my head or whatever. And then you hit the chicken on your shoulders and everything. Now, if an African picks up the same chicken, and start waving the same chicken,
oh my God, that's crazy.
Speaking in African, now it's voodoo. Now it's witchcraft. You understand what I'm saying? So you cannot expect the world to respect you and see the essence of what it is that you're doing if you are sitting over here demonizing your own traditional practices. That's why I said we listen, this is the 21st century, and we are just simply at the point where we got to just kind of look back and say, you know what, all this nonsense we've been doing all these years, it hasn't worked.
No,
it hasn't worked.
No.
We need to start trying to figure out how the world works. We just lost the ability to roll with the rest of the world into the 21st century. Colonization, the slave trade stunted our growth, and now it's almost like we're unable to take our rightful place in the universe. The way Africans operate now is like sitting at the dining table with a lot of kings, and I'm talking about the rest of the world, and then there's a dog underneath the table waiting for scraps. Now that dog represents the African, because that's the way we behave today. And we act like there is nothing about us worth flaunting to the world. What were we doing in Africa? How do we maintain ancient empires and communities before the Europeans came? How did we solve mathematical problems? What kind of architecture existed? What kind of medical practices existed? What kind of political systems existed? What kind of, you know, as far as human existence is concerned, what were these institutions that existed before the Europeans came? What were we? Just running around swinging from tree to tree in the jungle? How did Tarzan become king of the jungle when there were Africans there already? How did Tarzan get to talk to animals, and those Africans, indigenous people that were in Africa, don't have the ability to talk to gorillas? What's going on here? Who is telling your story? We need to get in the mindset of looking at ourselves from the perspective that we are God's creations. We are not a mistake. God did not make a mistake. There's a reason why you got black folks. There's a reason why you got Chinese. There's a reason why you got Europeans, the Mayans, the Incas. You know, there's a reason why you have the global human community. There are all kinds of roses: red rose, yellow rose, white rose, whatever rose you got, even the black rose in the that was put together in the lab. But they all have one thing in common. They are roses. There are different kinds of insects. You got bees, you got wasps, you got the red ants, you got all kinds of ants. They all have a purpose in life. There's nothing under the sun that is not divine. Diversity is divine, both in thought, both in your physical manifestation. There's no, even the clouds got the stratus cumulus, you got the cumulus cloud, you got the nimbus. There is nothing that was designed to be a specific way. When God created the insects, he didn't create just bees. When he created cats, he just didn't create the domestic cats. You got the leopard, you got the lion, you got the panther, you got the jaguar, but they all have one thing in common. They're all cats. Each one of them serves the purpose in this thing called life, the cauldron of life. If you want to cook a nice pot of soup, you have to put all the ingredients together, and you have to also get all the mechanism that you need for you to cook this beautiful pot of soup that is so palatable that you probably want to slap your mama when you get through eating it. You get your pot, you get the fire that boils your food, you put water in it, you get your shrimp, you get your spinach, you get your okra, you get your beef, goat meat, whatever it is that you put in it, And when it all comes together, it makes a great meal. Africans, black folks, we've forgotten how to cook.
But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What does your title mean? Dibia or Chwaja?
No.
Because the reason why I ask this is somebody asked me, "What is he? Is he a pastor? Is he a reverend?" I said, "No, he's a Dibia Chwaja."
Yeah, let me explain. I'm not your typical medicine man, right? I'm a Dibia because I've been through the apprenticeship, discipleship with Ahai Keokonyo. That's how I got to this position. On the spiritual level, on the level of educating the human mind, on the doctorship level, I put my Dibiaship on the same par of doctor, which is a teacher. That's what I am. I'm not a clairvoyant. I'm Dibia or Chwaja. I deal with the spiritual sense. I deal with educating our people beyond being a clairvoyant or somebody who's trying to cure a physical ailment. What I'm charged with here is trying to cure the spiritual ailment that ails people of African ancestry. That's where my expertise lies. Secondly, being a priest, a high chief priest of global faith ministry of Chiism, Gordianism originally, it is imperative that when we talk about our priests, those people that are charged as not as mediators between Chineke and another person, not as a middleman, but just as a consort, somebody that you could go to and speak to regarding spiritual issues, and somebody who is able to give you advice spiritually, to be able to guide your behavior, and hopefully you'll be able to live a more spiritually and maybe even economically productive life. That's what my Dibiaship is all about. In other religions, masters and Dibias and priests of all kinds of disciplines within these specific religions have titles that are indigenous and part of their primordial core. I'll give an example. In Judaism, the priest in Judaism, the Dibia, the spiritual consort in Judaism, is called a rabbi. In Christianism, he could be the Pope, he could be a cardinal, he could be a bishop, he could be an archbishop, he could be a reverend. In Islam, he could be an imam. And of course, in Nigeria, an hajj is somebody who's been to Mecca and come back, so they get that spiritual title. So as an Igbo man from Africa, and as a priest, it is imperative that I too take on a title that is primordial to my spiritual practice, which is Dibia. So I am Dibia or Chwaja. And my responsibility is to help you purify your mind so you could get in line with your social, spiritual responsibilities to your African community, because we believe that together we could strike a mighty blow. But as long as we continue to function as independent fingers, all we can do in the World Committee is just to offer a nice hard slap, but that's it. If we don't promote ourselves, nobody's going to promote us. The lizard fell from the tree, hit the ground, and said, well, if nobody's going to praise me, I'm going to praise myself. Because if you think that falling from this height and surviving it is no big deal, well, you're wrong. And that's why you see the lizard always shaking his head to say, yes, I'm bad. I'm all of it, all in one shell. If you think I am, you try it. You jump off a plane without a parachute. Now, if you survive, then you earn the right to wag your head like the lizard. That's what being an Ochwaja is all about.
And for my part, my title is Dibia or Chwaja.
Yes.
I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm a spiritual healer.
Yes.
And in European terms, I'm a clinical psychologist by European education.
Doctorate.
And I'm a doctor,
Yeah.
you know, but it's the same thing. That's
Yes.
what they do is spiritual
Yes.
healing,
Exactly.
mental healing. I'm a mental healer. I work with you. And in Igbo language, in Dibiaship as well, I will be called Dibia nnyocha.
Nnyocha, yes.
Dibia nnyocha. That's if I'm working as a psychologist. The equivalent in Igbo language is Dibia nnyocha.
Yes.
That is to probe, somebody who probes and examines you, examines you not physically but mentally, to find the source of your discomfort or the source of your mental challenges.
Yes.
So Dibia nnyocha is a psychologist. As a spiritualist, Dibia or Chwaja. I'm very proud of that. And I am proud because, you see, you can't talk about what people are doing to you when you continue to allow it.
Yes.
At some point, you've got to stand up and say, I am who I am, and I'm proud of it. I'm not saying don't be proud of who you are. Be proud of who you are. That's why you are different. That's why the diversity, there's beauty in everything.
Yes.
If God intended all of us to be the same thing, why the diversity? What's the point?
That's exactly.
There's a reason for it. And since we believe in the creative energy of Chi and Eke, the forces that came together to create humanity, then we must honor and respect what they chose to do. To do it not in a uniform way, but in diverse ways, to create all this beauty. And for my part, it becomes my responsibility to embrace that which I am. I am. It's an expression that we as African people need to embrace. Abum, maka Chineke ka njide.
Yes.
Maka Chineke ka njide otin sede. So I cannot disrespect Chineke by refusing who I am. Embracing who we are in every. As a matter of fact, not to do that is blasphemous. Because what you don't embrace today, your children will not embrace. The reason why the Igbo language is dying, it's not because Chineke caused it to die. It's not because white people caused it to die. It's not because Asians caused it to die. It's because Igbos are causing it to die. They don't know what we're talking about. I speak English when I do this show because a lot of our listeners don't speak Igbo. Now and then I throw it in, so just to remind everybody, I'm on Wafi Igbo. Let's not get it twisted, But I want to ask you this question. At some point in the history, when the history of the Igbos is told, history is not going to be kind to us. I'm sorry to say that. Because we are the most destructive forces in Nigeria to our culture. Oh, there are going to be some folks who will have a fit. Go ahead, please have a fit. I'm telling the truth.
It set you free.
Somebody contacted me to encourage me to make them a part of what we're doing to promote African culture. But his first name is English, his last name is English.
There you go.
I don't know where he's from. And I'm asking, are you Igbo? Who are you? Are you Yoruba? Are you Hausa? No, I'm Igbo, he proudly reminds me. I say, no, you're not.
Your name does not indicate.
He wants to tell me what village he comes from. I say, no, you're not from that village. Because the people from your village originally, they don't have that. I don't want to call his name because I don't want to embarrass him.
Yeah, just use another name. Just
a last name.
Yeah, use a different name just to kind of emphasize what.
Yeah, let me emphasize. His name, this is not his real name, but it might as well be Tony Maxwell.
Yes.
Tony Maxwell. he wants to brag about that he's Igbo, and he told me what village. I said, I couldn't tell you're from there.
Yep.
If somebody tells me that his name is Funke, I know he's Yoruba.
Yeah, exactly.
If somebody tells me that their name is
Tadashi Suzuki, he's Japanese.
I know he's Japanese. If a man says by his name is John Blue, I know he's European for the most part.
British.
When British, possibly. When people tell me their names, I can immediately tell where they're from. If an Igbo man tells me his name is Kama Ojuku, I know he's Igbo. But when you say your name is Blessing Woodward, I don't know where you're from.
I do. As soon as I hear Blessing, I say it's Igbo Nigerian, because there are more blessings. We're not
trying to be insulting.
Yeah.
But people, let me tell you something. At some point, you're gonna stop blaming white folks for your condition in the world. You gotta take responsibility for the role that you are playing. Let me talk a little bit about the lawyers in Nigeria. Look at our lawyers. They wear the wigs, the white wigs.
Yeah.
You know, a leftover of British colonial masters.
And they can't leave it alone.
And you're walking around, let me tell you, there's nothing more upsetting to me than to see all these lawyers with those wigs on their heads.
It's sick.
What is that? What is that? What are you trying to say?
That you can't be a lawyer if you're wearing African clothes.
If you don't wear that
you can't be a lawyer, you know, if you're wearing anything other than that garb. And as a matter of fact, if you need to have some kind of uniform for being an attorney, why don't you come up with a traditional type or an African type uniform that when somebody sees it on you, they say, that's an attorney.
That's an attorney. That's an African attorney.
Yeah.
You're wearing those things. And it's not just in Nigeria. A lot of African nations don't wear that.
Sub-Saharan Africans.
Yes.
From Kenya to Zambia, South Africa, everywhere. Wherever there are black folks in Africa, there's a wig. There's a white wig on. As far as that discipline is concerned.
Your son. I love my little nephew. We go out, we go hang out, and we go and eat something. Of course, COVID has really messed that up. But
yeah,
I enjoy taking that young man out. But you know what saddens me are some of the questions he asks about our people. Why do they do this, Auntie? Why do they have foreign names? Why can't their kids speak the language? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? The sad part is that these are the Igbo children of tomorrow. These are the Hausa children of tomorrow. These are the Yoruba children of tomorrow. They don't understand what we're doing.
They don't, because you know it's sort of like you see yourself as a black person, but then all the stuff that comes along with supposedly being sub-Saharan African, you don't see that. You don't see the clothes. You don't see the language. You don't see the spirituality. Remember, all human systems are product of religion. So once you lose that, you pretty much lost everything. It's kind of hard to come back and then try to create anything else when the spiritual, your primordial core is compromised. There's just nothing you can do about that. You have two options. Either you say, off with everything. I'm going to bring in everything that is new, but I'm going to institute and practice those things that are new just the way the people that I got it from practice it. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. All the stuff that we borrowed from the Europeans today, in the long run, is detrimental to the upward mobility of the African. It just is. We talk about the Dibiaship thing, and I just wanted to emphasize a point here. In the practice of Dibiaship or medicine, whatever term is comfortable for you, you kind of look at things that happen to get you to where you are while you're sick. Let's say you have a headache. They start to look at the stress factor, then your diet, then a whole bunch of other things that can happen that will cause you that headache. They need to kind of investigate the causes so that they could be able to prescribe treatment. Same thing goes with Africa. How did we get this headache? How did we get here? What is it about the Jewish mystique that has us just all jacked up in our minds? How did we get to this point where nothing seems to be working in all of sub-Saharan Africa? Maybe minus Rwanda, a little bit of Ghana, but Ghana is still going through it. How did we get here? Then you start to look at colonization. Then you start to look at slavery. Then you start to look at the role that religion played. Then you start to look at the educational system. What were some of the things that were instituted that has now made us look down upon everything that is part of who we were before we were resocialized, before they showed up on our shores with the Bible or the Quran? When you look at all that, just as you're investigating the headache, you come to find out that unless you rectify the causes that brought you to where you are, unless you deal with the truth about colonization and slavery, unless you deal with the truth about the miseducation of the African, unless you deal with the idea that in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, you don't even teach African history to where your students feel like they contributed to human civilization at some point. You don't flaunt anything about your primordial core. You act like you just were living on top of trees, and then here comes the Lord from Europe to bless you with a God that you didn't have before they showed up. You act like a beggar, somebody who had nothing to offer the world till they came. You cannot fix Africa. And please remember, this mindset is just not about the Africans on the continent. African Americans got the same problem. They don't flaunt anything about Africa in the African American community. You don't go to church on Sunday in the United States and hear your preacher talk about your contributions as a black man or woman that you made to civilized behavior. You don't get that in church. You don't go to Jamaica and get the same thing. You don't go to Haiti. You don't go to Europe and hear your preacher talk about your contributions to civilized behavior. So this mindset is just not a black African thing. It's a mindset that permeates all African communities all over the world. We have a headache. There's a cause. There's a reason why we got that headache. There's a reason why global African community is not moving forward. It is not joining people or the rest of the world in the 21st century. It is not flaunting its contribution to civilized behavior because we have not honestly dealt with cause and effect. We need to institute in our educational system a level of truth in how we got here, in who we are, in the contributions that we made. We need to love ourselves more. We need to unite and understand that it doesn't matter if you're Jamaican, if you're European black, or if you're Japanese black, whatever it is, you're black or you're on the African continent, we all suffer from the same persecution. No European or Japanese or anybody is going to see a black person and then say to themselves, well, before I let all my racism and prejudices come out, I need to find out if they're Nigerian or Jamaican. All they see is a black person. They don't care if you're from Ghana. They just don't give a damn. All they see is black. And we ourselves have to understand that. A lot of Africans, when they see African Americans come to Africa, they treat them like kings and queens with a lot of respect. But when that same African comes over here, he looks at the African American as if the African American is beneath him or her. Why is it that you can appreciate the African American if you come to Africa? But if you come to Africa, to the United States, you cannot appreciate the African American. You think that because Africans were enslaved, that somehow they're different from you. Your great-great-great-great-grandfather could have been one of those people that came over here and was enslaved in America. And the person that you might be talking to might be a descendant from your own family tree. You have no idea. We have to be unified. Unity is the key.
Is the key.
It is the key. The Jews see themselves as one people all over the world, no matter where they are, and they open up Israel. By the way, the land doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the Palestinians, but that's a different conversation altogether. But they open up Israel for all Jewish global citizens. We have to do the same thing in Africa. Unity is the key. The African American, the Jamaican, the Haitian is my brother and my sister. There is no difference between me and them because as far as we are concerned, we have suffered and we continue to suffer the same global prejudice and racism.
And we must refrain from hating. You know, there was a song when we were little that my father and mother taught us when we went to church, went to Obasioha. Some people just hate themselves and everything their own and love everything foreign with zeal. A nation of such people can never progress till they learn to love their things. Abasa atufo. Digeji abo kananya.
Ezioka. Truth.
Abasa atufo. Digeji abo kananya. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very deep topic that we can't possibly cover in 1 hour. However, we want you to visit our website, chiism.org. It's been scrolling down, and go and read a whole lot more about Dibia, holistic and spiritual practice. Learn about all the different Dibias, what they're called, what they do, and then you compare and contrast with all the other ones that you've gone to college to learn. But you need to know about your own. When you own something and throw it away, you can never get rich. And you cannot blame the person who comes into your house and takes your things. You can't get mad at them. Get mad at yourself, because that is where the blame now lies. Perhaps before it lied in the hands of those who came in and took from you. But as long as you leave that door open and they continue to take your mental well-being away from you, your resources from you, everything that they take now becomes your problem, your fault. Because you have access to the same thing they have now. But you refuse to take advantage of it for the betterment of your own. We get so bent out of shape when any one of us, any one African has the audacity. Let me repeat that word, audacity.
Yeah.
Stand up and say, enough. Please forgive me for raising my voice. Sometimes you got to do that.
It's the way life goes. Sometimes you just got to do. You know what they say?
We have a tendency to get embarrassed about our own things. She calls herself a Dibia. He calls himself a Dibia. Ah, what is that? What do they do? I mean, you just start to, by the time you get through asking yourself that question, you just don't even want to be, you don't even want to deal with the African concepts because you have been taught to demonize it. Let me make something perfectly clear to all of us. I don't blame white folks for nothing anymore.
Yep.
I blame us now.
We're it now. When
I look in the mirror, everything that we are doing to ourselves, we need to take credit. Wherever our behinds find itself, wherever our butts, I'm sorry to use that expression, finds itself, our minds put it there.
True, true.
We have become the most destructive force in the minds of our children. Teach our children to hate their own things, to hate their people, to speak their language. You know what? History is not going to be kind to us. And we, as long as we continue to undermine ourselves, we will always never be able to get to the table. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm okay Dibia Ochoaja, Dr. Wonyo Husimiri. And it's been a pleasure to have Dibia Ochoaja Yudi Onyoha to be a part of this discussion. Remember, theism.org. Go and find out some more. We've written it, we've taken the time, we've done the research. All you have to do is take the time and go find out who you are, who your people are. And so it is. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to our next episode next week. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.